Hey there, and welcome to today's video on how to actually optimize Facebook ads my way. This is how I do it, and I've just made this document. Document will be below. I spent like 10-15 minutes making it. So just go and swipe it. It's in the description and pin comment. So just go and check it out. Now look, I wanted to sort of go through this. You can see in this ad account, like that's just last 7 days. You can see whatever the ROAS is an average of about a 5. You can see that the cost per purchase has gone up. You can see quite badly actually, and partly because it's Australian and we've had a public holiday and just had a bad week, right? If we look at last 30 days, you can see that, overall it hasn't done that well just because the last 7 days really did ruin things. If I look at, for instance, today, whatever, I don't know, it doesn't show it, but you get my point. Like that one's not doing that well. I might, be looking at optimizing it. And that's where really important to keep that in mind. Like this one's absolutely crushing it. That's a remarketing campaign, crushing it. And we're also running an end of financial year sale. So that's helping as well, because here in Australia, the end of financial year is the end of June, coming July. So a lot of people run sales, running like a 20% off site-wide, works extremely well. You can see the cost per click and stuff is quite well too. And that's why you get so many add to carts, because it's remarketing and stuff as well. But that's pretty much it. And you can see I've literally just of today started running a new campaign, as well as starting to test that as well. But if we have a look at, for example, yesterday, overall, sort of a bit off. Yeah, so it's looking at the date range, but overall, yesterday was a nice solid, whatever that is, 8 ROAS average. So the point is, how I optimize this is, for the most part, I'm going to go through that and we're going to sort of discuss this. And there's a lot of different ways about going about it, but this is sort of my way that I find personally works best for me and that I think is the most logical. So let's just jump straight into it. So really comes down to priorities, right? So if you're a software as a service business, you'll probably be running a trial or something, whatever that conversion model is. Obviously that is. I know most people are focused on e-commerce. So that's why I've made all today's notes about e-commerce, but fundamentally it's the same. Cost per conversion for a trial or for a purchase is the exact same. It's just a different conversion goal basically. And so this is applicable for any business, but I just always sort of want to make that clear. Always like to make it clear, ROAS is not the be-all, end-all. As you can sort of see when you have a look at that ad account, ROAS is not indicative. Now, one of the things that I did want to show was you'll notice generally, hold on, if I look at last 14 days, do you see how a lower cost per purchase means a higher ROAS? Do you see how these are all similar, right? Those actually had more purchases, but the ROAS is lower, right? Lower cost per purchase, higher ROAS. Okay, that's the key thing that I really want to ingrain in your mind today that I think is super important. Cheaper conversions, higher ROAS. ROAS is an unreliable statistic because it is indicative of that you might get someone. I've had orders where it's an $800 order. Oh my God, I got one purchase, $800, and I spent $50 or something. I've got like a 40X. I don't know what it is. Anyway, a huge return on ad spend, right? But then I might not ever get another purchase. That ROAS will only continue to go down and just chew into that. Your cost per purchase will only go up, okay? You focus, number one, on cost per conversions, okay? Cost per conversion is the number one stat you look for when you optimize, whether it's the ad set, just looking at the ad set, or the ad, or when you drill down. Okay, most important things. More conversions, more repeat customers long term. Simple as that, right? Because the more purchases that I can get, right? So ideally you want to get the cheapest cost per conversion and the most conversions. Okay, because then you're going to get a lot more add to carts, which is 0.3. Because to get a lot of conversions, you get always a lot of add to carts. You're always going to get more add to carts than you do purchases. Okay, so that's why you want to focus on cheaper conversions, because you're going to get more conversions and you're going to get more add to carts. Your ROAS is going to be more stable. As I put in point 4 there, I think ROAS is a stupid statistic personally. It's an important one that's used for justification, of course, but it's really, I know I do it a bit too, but it really is just an unreliable statistic. Okay, it's an unreliable statistic in my eyes. Next, you have your cost per click, right? So how much your cost per click is, the lower the cost per click, the more clicks you get, the more add to carts, and so on and so forth, right? So while that is important, you don't want to focus on it first and foremost. And next is your click-through rate. Sometimes your click-through rate can actually be lower, and you might get more conversions. That's why I put those two last, right? You want to focus on your end goal first and the most of it. And that's sort of why I wanted to put that there, and why I put those notes there to make it very clear. Because for me, that's what's allowed me to retain a high ROAS and consistently optimize around that. To further optimize, I always optimize for purchase, right? So in the ad set, when you do, you choose your conversion model, whatever it's called now, always for purchase. Nothing else, as your goal is always purchase. Back in the day, people would do VC, add to cart, all these things, custom conversions. You don't need it. Purchase, simple, move on. Never think about it. When you find a winning audience, okay, so I'm going to start to get into the drill down, but when you find a winning audience, right, the easiest thing I do is I find a similar audience. Whether it is an interest audience or whether it is a lookalike, I will just find something very similar. Like try and do one step similar, one step away, because then you're doing the most logical split testing, right? So I've had it where literally like Kim Kardashian has done really well for me. And I just use the drop down, use suggestion, the top next suggestion. That was it. When I have a lookalike that does really well, like I've got a purchase lookalike that is based on entire web traffic of 1% to 2%, I decided to do 0% to 2% because it includes 1% to 2%, but also includes 0% to 1%. I can go into a further strategy on that, but that's pretty much it. You can see that it's very similar, but I'm opening it up a little bit more and testing it. One of the key things when I say all of this is that you should always duplicate it. One change, when you do one change, you duplicate, test that change in another ad set. Okay. You can also put it in another campaign. You can only have up to 50 ad sets per campaign, so that's for another discussion. But generally speaking, duplicate the ad set, do the change. Why do you do it that way? If you do the change in that ad set, it will completely destroy it. 90% of the time it will destroy it, and it's not a split test because it's just not a split test, is it? You want to know for certain, and this is the easiest way to do it. So that's what you want to do. Okay, so whenever I talk about doing this, you find the change that you like, duplicate it, make the change, leave it for 3 days. Okay, so I didn't add that in as notes, but I should. So same with creatives, whether it's an image or video, do the same, but slightly different. Firstly, your priority should always be in this order: the creative itself, and then the copy, the enhancements. Okay, so there's 3 areas mainly of the ad sets you can put it down to. There's the creative itself, the copy, the enhancements. We're in a day and age where everything is all about image, or especially these days, video, right? So, and it should be video, image. Generally, I find video just does better, right? It just always does better. And now with all the AI tools out there, it's only easier to do. So very important to keep that in mind. The copy is next, and then the enhancements. The enhancements is just basically Facebook's way of trying to make it so you can add different languages, slideshows. I can't remember all of them. So that one's not really that important, but I wanted to add it there for context. With the copy, I literally just use a custom GPT. There's so many GPTs out there that you can find on the community, or you can use Claude. I just use that. Facebook has its own where it can make variations for you. But I find it's not really the copy that does really well, unless it's for things like a specific sale. Like as I said, like I'm running in a financial year, I'll run that in the headline. It gets people's attention, but it's still really the creative. The creative is what people sees first, right? Especially when you're running e-commerce, the placements that do really well is always things like reels and stories. And so reels and stories, what do you think people see first? The copy or the creative? The creative, because they're on their mobile. That's what they're flicking for. That's why you want to focus on that first and foremost. So you make split tests. So whatever tool you're using, make a split test of that. Maybe change the script for the AI UGC, maybe duplicate the image and change some coloring, change some of the text, just some small things and then split test that, right? In a new ad set. Now, when it comes to split testing an ad set, you can do it in the same ad, you can do that in the same ad set. Okay, so duplicate it, change, see how it goes. So when you're doing split testing ads, duplicate the ad within that ad set because you know that ad set's working. Okay, because you don't want to make two changes. Because if you make two changes, duplicate the ad set and put in the new ad, you're doing technically two changes. Whereas this, you want to try and keep it to one change. So you'll see that everything you do really is a logical one change process. Very risk averse. That's how I work, right? As I said, don't really care about that. At the campaign level, it's very important that I maintain my budget, right? I spend like, I think 5-10 grand a month. My brand does about 70-80K. I don't want to scale it more than that. I've got my other businesses. I'm busy and I'm happy with that, right? But my point is that so when things are working, I give it 3 days and I see the averages, right? So is it working? All right. If it is and it's within budget, I'll increase it. And by that, I mean increase it 20%. I always say the 20% rule. And because part of the equation that is not a quantifiable thing is patience. The amount of people that I've spoken to where they're like something's working and they're like, the next day it's like, 50% lower. And then the next day, and that's the reality that you get, right? It's not spoken about heavily, but it is. Patience is part of it, right? You need to invest to get the data, right? So when you're doing these split tests, be patient. Don't look at it every 5 minutes. Look at it once a day, walk away, focus on other elements in the business. It's another reason that I always say to diversify using tools like Google Ads. There's Bing Ads, more Google Ads is better, obviously. Email marketing, SEO, influencer marketing, affiliate marketing, referral marketing. There's a lot of different types of marketing you can do, wholesale, etc. Focus on that and come back to it, right? The amount of people that only focus just on Facebook ads and nothing else, as a result, then you're just like hyper focused on every little thing. You end up making really poor judgments. I've been there, done that, right? I find the more you step back, you make more clear judgments, right? So keep that in mind. Using AI tools to help you manage them does not fix the equation either. So when I optimize, I first look at our overall and turn off ad sets and ads. In many regards, I look at I should take that back. I look at the ads and then the ad sets. Because sometimes the ads, you might have 4 ads and 2 have done really bad, and the ad set overall looks bad, but then when you turn those ads off, it actually starts popping. So I apologize. I meant ads and then ad sets. Okay, so try and focus on that. I clean up my ads, and then I go from there. My apologies there. I got a phone call, had to answer that. Continuing on. So when I optimize, I look first and as I said, at the ads and then the ad sets. Then I look at the remaining ad sets and I check the drill down data. Because it's the ads, it's not really the ads that you should be that worried about. You want to turn off the bad ads. And as I said, it's based on things like using this. And then you go down here and you look at the ad sets, and that's where I drill down. I don't drill down at every ad because you'll have 4 ads, 10 ads, and in one ad set, it takes forever. No, you just do it at the ad set level, right? You don't want to get too bogged down in every little detail, right? Even as a digital marketing agency, you just don't. Okay, so moving on. So what you want to do is you look at country, then gender, then age, then placement. Those are the main 4 you really look at. And you try and find golden nuggets. And by golden nuggets is because it makes perfect sense to do this way. Country is always going to be the biggest. If you take out, and you're doing US and Australia, and you take out Australia, that's a huge chunk gone, as opposed to gender, right? Because you're still leaving half of Australia or something, right? In theory. Whereas if you take out the whole of Australia, you take out everything. So you do it in terms of you drill down country, gender, age, placement. Okay, and then what you want to do is how you determine something's doing well. 1 means nothing. 1 purchase, nothing. Ignore it, move on. Give it some time, at least after 3 days, right? Is what I'm always talking. I didn't add that in, but at least after 3 days. 2 purchases is okay, cool. That's a bit of validation, right? It's not a fluke, right? 1 is like a fluke. We all have gotten there. You look at all the starting businesses and they all get a sale and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And don't get me wrong, it is. But then you never get another sale. It can be a fluke. It's just the way of the world. 3, though, is something is working. Obviously, the more than that, you're like, wow, I'm really starting to spin the wheels here. Okay. So you want to look at 3. 3 is sort of at minimum the golden rule that I sort of look at, especially in the early days, right? As you get more data, it'll become easier. We're trying to start it Simple here. Okay, so I look at the at least for 3, and then I decide. I drop down for each. So I do a drop down and I'll look for, do I see 3 in country in that ad set? Okay, yep. And if I see multiple with 3, that means both are working well. So if I want to do a split test, maybe I might want to actually just split them out into separate ad sets. One for US, one for Australia. Right? Remember, one change. So you can do both, but you do one change per ad set. Okay, if that makes sense. And so if, as I said, I don't do multiple changes. You always duplicate it. Always duplicate the ad set within that campaign unless your campaign is maxed out in terms of ad sets. Don't break it. Don't touch the one that's working well. Trust me when I say don't turn it off. Don't touch it. Let it run. Okay, it's gone through a learning optimization phase. What Facebook does is when you've got like a 20 million people audience and you're spending $100 a day, you're not targeting everyone in that 20 million. You're targeting pockets. And so different pockets within that is the part that you can't replicate, okay, no matter what logic. And so sometimes some pockets do better than others. If you duplicate the same ad set exactly the same, you'll find some do better than others. I don't know why. Just different pockets from their machine learning will do better. Okay, so there's some parts you can never control, but that's why I try and control it in a very logical, clear, concise fashion. In terms of the campaign, I simply look, is it the same product which is performing in terms of the campaign? And so, pardon me. So then I'll look at country. If I can find anything to cut out, all right, I'll duplicate it. If I see gender, if I can cut anything out, I'll duplicate it, right? And what you end up doing is, like, I look at all 4 and I'll duplicate each if I find little ones, and I'll just keep doing it. And what I'll do is I'll just sort of keep testing. And sometimes, let's say if I found in age that I've done really, really well with a different age demographic, I will, I'll then have a look at it and I say, okay, well, I've tested age from 25-54 to 25-44. Okay, I'll go back to the start again. So no matter what one you end up testing in this audience, you go back to the top in that ad set and go down. Okay, and you just repeat that. Don't overthink it. Using this simple approach of 1 to 4 and then 1 to 3 allows you to, for the most part, optimize for the most part Facebook like any expert would. I guarantee you that's what most media buyers do. There's no hidden skill here. This is pretty much it. And so, just go with that, right? Just remember the key rules, 1 change per ad set. And for the most part, you're good to go. And by focusing on points 1 to 6, where your cost per conversion is number 1, conversions, then add to cart, then ROAS, cost per link click, and click-through rate, for the most part, you're settled. And this is collectively for any business, right? Any business of any type. When it comes to the campaigns, I simply look at if it's the same product, right? Because you might be running multiple products, different single product campaigns, whatever it is, which is performing best, I change the budgets. I just change the budgets because basically I run campaign-based budgets. That's sort of how I do it, right? So I look at the lowest cost per purchase. Should I increase it? And I increase it 20%. 20% every 3 or 7 days. It depends on your budget. If you've got a tighter budget, it's every 7 days. If you've got a bigger budget, it's 3 days, because you might be like, oh, well, after the next 3 days, I'll increase it another 20%. So just remember, 3 days if you got a bit more to risk, so to speak, 7 days if you don't. And, it sort of depends on your business, right? So just keep that stuff in mind. That's really important. Remarketing campaigns, I always look at it's tied directly to the collective amount of cold campaigns. So you might have 3 cold campaigns for one product, spending $300, 20% of that goes to remarketing between DPA and single product image remarketing campaigns. So $300, what's 10%? My maths is just way off right now. So 10% of $100 is, $30. Pardon me, $60. It'll be 20%. So $60. And what I usually do is I will I'll put the same budget to both DPA Advantage Plus and my cold remarketing manual campaign, and then see which does better, right? And if they're both doing well, one's doing slightly better than the other, I'll just increase the budget and that to the other, right? So that's all I really do. Remarketing, it should be very important to understand. I barely optimize it. I don't optimize placement. I don't optimize age, gender. Those people that have come to that, you've got to remember that with remarketing, especially with my approach, I do omni-channel remarketing. I get all of that traffic, whether it's from Google, and I remarket them on Facebook. Okay? Facebook is the king of remarketing, I find. Google is actually really good at cold traffic and getting extremely good qualified traffic. Facebook is where you end up. Remember the psychology that Facebook is where you will always end up. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, whatever. You always end up there at some point in your life, don't you? That's why you're watching this video, right? Because everyone ends up there. You might start on X, you might start on YouTube, but for some, Facebook is just a part of the culture. So having your remarketing campaign open and just focusing on the budget and testing new ads is all I really do. Following this strategy, using these slides, you will see a significant increase in your ROAS. I hope this has been helpful. So as I said, get that down below. If you did like today's video, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Other than that, thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely day. Take care and goodbye.